Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about something that might sound, on the surface, like a lighthearted topic, and it is, genuinely, a joyful story, but that actually contains within it a much deeper conversation about identity, artistic evolution, presence, and the specific way that ParkJimin has always used his physical presentation as an extension of his creative and emotional self. We are talking about Jimin's hair. Specifically, we are talking about the journey from the long flowing blonde waves that earned him the internet nickname Rapunzelman, through the surprising braid moment that nobody predicted, and finally to Las Vegas, to Allegiant Stadium on the Las Vegas Strip, where BTS performed 4 sold-out nights on May 23, 24, 27, and 28 as part of the Arirang World Tour, and where Jimin arrived looking like something that the internet needed at least 48 hours to fully process. But before we get to Las Vegas, we need to start at the beginning of this particular chapter of the story, because the Las Vegas hair moment did not happen in isolation. It is the latest development in an arc that has been building across the entire Arirang era, and understanding the arc is what makes the destination mean something. The first major hair moment of the Arirang tour came during the Tokyo Dome soundcheck on April 17, 2026, when Jimin appeared with noticeably longer blonde hair compared to his previous look at the Seoul concerts held on April 12. At the time of the Seoul shows, his hair had been around shoulder length. But by the Tokyo soundcheck, it had grown or been extended to something that was unmistakably longer, unmistakably statement-making, and unmistakably Jimin in the specific way that his physical presentation always manages to be. The internet's response was immediate, unanimous, and completely predictable to anyone who has been paying attention to how Jimin and his relationship with ARMY actually works. The nickname Rapunzelman appeared within hours, spread within minutes of appearing, and was trending across multiple social media platforms before the actual concert had even started. Because that is what happens when Jimin shows up with hair that reaches toward the middle of his back, blonde and flowing, in the context of a sold-out Tokyo Dome concert that is itself one of the most significant musical events of the year. The combination of the scale of the moment and the specific visual impact of what he looked like in that moment created something that felt, to the people watching it, genuinely cinematic. Not idle content. Not promotional imagery. Something that belonged more to the vocabulary of film or fashion editorial, a specific quality of presence that the Rapunzelman nickname captured perfectly, not just because the hair was long but because there was something about how he wore it that felt genuinely otherworldly. The Rapunzel reference is worth unpacking briefly because it is not just about length. Rapunzel as a cultural archetype carries a specific constellation of meanings, something hidden and rare, something whose full significance is only revealed gradually, something whose beauty becomes a kind of power that changes the dynamic of every situation it enters. When ARMY called him Rapunzelman, they were not just making a joke about hair length. They were reaching for a mythological frame that could hold the specific quality of what they were seeing, which was Jimin with long hair moving through a concert space in a way that made everything around him look like a setting for him rather than an environment he was moving through. That is a specific kind of presence. And the long blonde hair, in Tokyo, was the visual element that made it impossible to look anywhere else. But hair, for Jimin, has never been a static thing. It has never been something that simply stays where it is from one show to the next, from one city to the next, from one chapter to the next. Jimin's relationship with his own presentation is as dynamic and as creative and as intentionally considered as every other aspect of his artistry. He has cycled through more distinct hair chapters in his career than most artists manage in a lifetime, and each one has felt not like a stylist's decision made for photographic purposes but like an authentic expression of where he is at that specific moment in his development. The black hair of the early BTS years. The silver gray of the blood, sweat and tears era. The orange of wings. The dramatic experiments of Map of the Soul. And now, in the Arirang era, the long flowing blonde of Rapunzelman followed by whatever came next, followed by whatever he decided Las Vegas deserved. And what he decided Las Vegas deserved was braids. Not the flowing Rapunzel waves of Tokyo. Not the shoulder-length look of Seoul. Braids. In Las Vegas. At Allegiant Stadium. In front of a crowd that fills one of the most technically advanced indoor stadium venues in the United States, with the entire Las Vegas Strip lit up in BTS colors and Welcome ARMY messages running on digital billboards across the city from 11 p.m. to midnight on every show night. The Las Vegas leg of the Arirang World Tour was not just a series of concerts. It was, by any reasonable description, a structural takeover of one of the world's most famous entertainment destinations. A high-roller observation will pulsed with airy-rang visuals. Luxor and Mandalay Bay transformed the southern end of the strip into a gateway that made the experience of arriving in Las Vegas during BTS week feel like entering a different version of the city, one that had been temporarily but completely reoriented around a single creative event. That is the context in which Jimin showed up with braids. Not a small show. Not a low-stakes moment where a hair change could slip by without comment. He showed up with braids to 4 consecutive sold-out nights at a stadium that seats 65,000 people, in a city that had essentially been decorated in his honor along with his 6 bandmates, with the whole world watching. And the reaction was everything that the moment deserved. The braids changed the visual language of everything. Where the Rapunzelman look was ethereal, floating, almost fantastical, the visual equivalent of something from a fairy tale, the braids were something different. Grounded. Intentional. Strong in a way that felt more ancient than contemporary, more elemental than fashionable. Braids as a hairstyle carry their own cultural and aesthetic history, one that spans multiple traditions and multiple meanings, but in every tradition and in every context, they communicate something specific, a quality of preparation, of readiness, of having gathered and contained and disciplined something that might otherwise flow freely. Where the long flowing hair said, "I am here and I am moving and the world bends around me," the braids said, "I am here and I am rooted and the world cannot move me." And that contrast, between the flowing softness of Rapunzelman and the grounded intentionality of the braids, is itself a story about Jimin and about this specific era of his career and this specific leg of the tour. Because Las Vegas is not Tokyo. The energy is different. The cultural context is different. The specific demands of performing in what amounts to the entertainment capital of the world, in a city that exists specifically for spectacle and for the delivery of experiences that exceed normal life, those demands are different from the demands of Tokyo Dome, which has its own kind of sacred quality in the history of BTS's relationship with Japan and Japanese fans. Jimin, who has always been someone who brings a specific and intentionally considered version of himself to each specific context, arrived in Las Vegas having made a visual choice that communicated something. The braids said, "I know where I am. I know what this is. I have prepared for this specifically. This is not me floating through a dream. This is me arriving at a destination I have been moving toward deliberately, and I am fully here." The fan response to the Las Vegas braids followed a pattern that will be familiar to anyone who has been watching Jimin's visual evolution over the years. First, the immediate, visceral, barely coherent reaction. The screenshots and clips circulating within seconds of the first sighting. The comments that are more sound than words, the all-caps declarations, the keyboard smashing, the completely appropriate acknowledgement that something has happened that nobody was prepared for. Then, the slow unpacking. The side-by-side comparisons with the Tokyo look and the Seoul look, the analyses of what the different choices communicate, the conversations about which era of hair is the best, a conversation that generates thousands of responses and arrives at no conclusion and is immediately started again every time a new look appears. And then, the settling into appreciation. The recognition that this is simply what Jimin does, that his relationship with his own visual presentation is part of his artistry in the same way that his vocal choices and his choreographic instincts are part of his artistry, and that approaching it with the same attentiveness and care that he brings to everything else produces results that are consistently, genuinely surprising. The broader context of the Las Vegas shows makes the braids moment even more significant when you consider what Las Vegas represents as a stop on the Ararang World Tour. This was not the first major North American leg of a BTS tour. But it was the first time BTS had performed in Las Vegas with the full weight of everything that has happened in the years since their last major touring presence, the solo careers, the military service, the comeback, the Ararang album, the return. The Las Vegas shows represented something that multiple publications described as the event of the decade, not just a concert but a moment in history marking the full group reunion of all 7 members at one of the world's most iconic entertainment venues. In that context, the choice to arrive with braids becomes a kind of artistic statement about readiness and presence and the specific quality of attention that Jimin brings to understanding what a moment needs. Because Las Vegas does not need softness. Las Vegas does not need the dreamlike quality of Rapunzelman moving through the lights of Tokyo Dome. Las Vegas needs presence. Commitment. The visual declaration that you are not here to float through the spectacle but to be the spectacle, to stand in the middle of one of the most artificially stimulating environments on earth and make yourself the thing that everyone's eyes go to naturally, not because of the surroundings but because of what you yourself are bringing. The braids delivered that. And delivered it in a way that was distinctly, recognizably, irreducibly Jimin, because the braids were not aggressive or heavy or trying to compete with the city around them. They were contained. Elegant. Intricate in the way that his choreography is intricate, deeply considered at the level of detail, but unified and clean at the level of overall impression. The kind of choice that looks simple until you look closer and realize it is actually the product of a sophisticated visual intelligence making a very specific decision about what this moment requires. There is a line of conversation in the fan community about Jimin's hair that runs roughly as follows. Every era of his hair is someone's favorite, and every era ends before that person is fully ready for it to end, and every new era immediately becomes someone else's favorite. The Rapunzelman era, which is not quite over as of Las Vegas but has clearly been joined by a new chapter, already has its devoted partisans, people for whom the image of Jimin in Tokyo Dome with long blonde hair flowing as he performed is already one of the defining images of the Erarang era, already something they will carry with them as one of the things they remember about 2026. And those people are right. It is genuinely extraordinary. It was always going to be remembered. But the Las Vegas braids are also going to be remembered. And not just because they are visually striking in their own right, though they are. They are going to be remembered because of what they said about the artist who chose them. About a person who understands that presence is not uniform, that different moments call for different expressions of the self, and that the job of an artist who is performing across an entire world tour, across Tokyo and Tampa and El Paso and Las Vegas and all the cities yet to come, is not to find one look and hold it for the duration but to keep evolving, keep responding, keep bringing something fresh and specific and intentional to each new context. The Erarang World Tour began on April 9, 2026, in Goyang, and will run through March 14, 2027, covering 85 concerts in 34 countries across Asia, North America, Europe, South America, and Oceania, the largest tour ever undertaken by a K-pop act. Across all of those cities, all of those stages, all of those moments, Jimin is going to continue evolving. The hair will change again. The visual presentation will shift in ways that nobody predicts until the moment they see it and immediately recognize it as the only thing it could have been. Because that is how Jimin works. That is the specific quality that makes watching this era of his career, watching any era of his career, feel like something that you do not want to miss, because you genuinely do not know what is coming next and you have learned, by now, that whatever it is will be worth seeing. From Rapunzelman to braids. From Tokyo to Las Vegas. From the dreamlike floating quality of one choice to the grounded deliberate power of another. Each one perfect for its moment. Each one unmistakably him. Each one another piece of evidence for the case that ParkJimin is not just a performer who shows up and delivers a set list. He is an artist who shows up and delivers a version of himself that has been specifically considered for the specific moment he is walking into, with every element, voice, movement, presence, and yes, hair, in service of the fullest possible expression of what that moment deserves. Las Vegas deserved the braids. And based on the evidence of everything that has come before and everything that is still coming, wherever BTS goes next on this tour, that city will deserve whatever Jimin decides to bring to it too. That is the promise and the joy of watching this era unfold. Something unexpected is always coming. And it is always, somehow, exactly right. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment telling me which JiminHair era is your personal favorite across the entire Erarang tour so far, and subscribe if you have not already. We will see you in the next one.